Thank you everyone for coming. It's lovely to meet everybody. My name's Omari. I started my business, which is Mirror Systems Limited, about a year ago, after getting kind of deep into the weeds of AI, and I've been working with companies to help them with their integrations and build solutions for them, specifically in the recruitment industry, but kind of across many kind of B2B businesses. So I wanted to work with Kevin today, and I appreciate, again, everyone coming. Can you all see my screen first and foremost? Is that visible to everyone? Wonderful. So yeah, I wanted to kind of start with the top line discussion about some of my experiences working with companies and discussing where AI kind of actually fits into businesses, because one thing that I've noticed first and foremost is that there's a lot of obviously hype around AI. There's a lot of talk on particularly LinkedIn from some very kind of noisy and loud accounts talking about a variety of different topics. And I wanted to kind of cut through some of that, demystify it, and kind of apply a bit more of a grounding understanding framework for what AI is, how it operates, and how to best integrate it into your business. So starting off on the first slide, where AI actually fits, the practical way to tell the difference between AI that earns its place and AI that's just expensive noise. So everybody says the word AI, nobody says where. Every tool now has AI in the name. Every conference says adapt or die, and most businesses are left guessing, buying subscriptions that get used twice and then quietly abandoned. This is something that we've kind of seen across the AI space as people kind of rush to integrate. There's a plethora of tools that are all coming out. There's a lot of kind of noise. But one stat that I wanted to point out early on is that kind of about 80 to 85% of AI integrations kind of have failed in large corporations. And hopefully this talk will give a bit of insight into why that's happening and how to best address the issue. So 1 hour, one skill. By the end of this talk, you'll be able to look at your own work and sort it for yourself. Ask where AI genuinely saves time and where it's just noise, no jargon, no hype, and no pitch. So starting off, two different things tend to get called AI. The first is automations, and the second is language models. So automations is something that's pretty antiquated. We've had automations for a long time. If this, then that. They're fast, they're cheap, they're reliable, completely rigid, brilliant for moving data between systems, and have been around for a long time. And then there's language models, which work with meaning. They read, they write, they summarize, and sort like a person would without being told every step. This is the new part, and this is why the rules have just changed. So differentiating between automations and language models is kind of fundamental on a ground level to the understanding of how we're going to integrate AI over a period of time. Combining the systems together is generating the best approach. So AI fits pattern work, not judgment work. Everything else in the series builds on that single direction. If a task is repeats and follows a pattern, AI can probably help. If it needs judgment, relationships, or genuine novelty, then it's best to have a human making those kind of decisions. This kind of scales outward. So in the first instance, repetition and simple tasks are the best for AI to assist with. But in the limit, if you're building more complicated systems across kind of larger companies or infrastructure and databases, then you can have AI making some decisions, but you want to be able to scaffold those decisions with intention and with pretty well-defined guardrails to make sure that it kind of creates deterministic approaches. In a business context, we're looking for deterministic results when it comes to AI outputs, generally. So 2 buckets. AI fits here, and if it repeats and follows a pattern, screening, sorting first drafts, summarizing, moving into information between systems, answering the same question for the 10th time, these are great. If it needs judgment or trust, decision makers with real stakes, relationships, negotiation, taste, anything you'd never hand over to a brand new temp on day one, it's better to have a human in the loop to make those kind of decisions. So again, I'm just kind of underlining the point that simplistic, repetitive tasks that kind of happen on a schedule or are repetitive and boring, these are the best for AI integration to solve. And things that need kind of a bit more of a human touch, more cognition, still better to stick with a human. But we can build systems around those decisions to assist with making them happen once the decision is made, but it should sit with a human, the decisions. So 3 important questions to ask yourselves before beginning the integration process. Does the task repeat? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it every candidate or every client? Does it follow a pattern? Could you write down those steps for somebody else? is this task easily translatable? Is it something that you can easily articulate to a new member of staff? Would a capable temp with good instructions get it right? If that's the case, then AI can likely do it as well. The work that gives you hours back. So a couple of different things that we've built for clients in the past, things like screening, sorting, applications, inquiries, documents, leads. So if you've got kind of a database that you want interpreted, things like business analysis, things like scoring data, pulling it out of large systems, these are great tasks for AI. Writing drafts for emails, we get a massive amount of emails coming in. Can we have responses drafted in our brand, our tone of voice, things that we can set specific guidelines for? Another great opportunity to use and integrate AI to save time. Summarizing, whether that's long documents, calls, threads into what matters. These are pretty common now already. You'll see in your email box, whether you use Gmail or not, you're starting to see summaries at the top, at the bottom. Sometimes helpful, sometimes not helpful, but I think in the world of data analysis, this is far more useful. So if you're trying to interpret massive amounts of numbers, make projections over a long period of time, if you've got all your documents in kind of a SharePoint and you want to create business analysis over a period of time or projections for the future, another great opportunity to use AI, or finding patterns, as I've just mentioned, across more information than one person can hold by connecting multiple systems to one data source. So what this looks like in practice, hours in a day into minutes. So this is a case study from one of our clients, a recruitment firm, where their consultants were losing kind of hours every single day to screening and matching candidates, repetitive pattern-heavy work. We built them a system that essentially looked at their database and allowed them to drop in CVs, and then it pulled matches out of that database with a score system that they helped us refine and define, so that then they could simply drop CVs into a system, chat about it if they wanted to. It had a chatbot function, but essentially it would just look through their database, scan it, and pull CVs into a matching engine, which told them the best matches inside their database for these CVs. It took the grind of good people, but it didn't replace them. So the consultants themselves didn't get automated away. They got their day back for the work that actually needs them, which again, relationships, judgment, placing people. It's the shape of every AI project that sticks. So I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the goal here. One thing that I've been a little alarmed by, but also there's a level of understanding, is kind of businesses' intentionality when it comes to AI. And I think this is a really important point to stop on and have maybe a think about what the goal is. The way I see this is that it takes kind of two paths. There's the revenue engine. We want AI to come in and generate revenue. And there's the time-saving engine. We want AI to save our staff time. These, I think, are slightly different approaches with very different outcomes. And I think it's really important to kind of like, one thing I'll start doing now we've gotten a bit into the conversation, into the deck, is slowing down and having a conversation about how we want to think about what solutions, what our business is trying to solve from the ground up with AI. Now we've got a bit of scaffolding. I think that there's, again, like I just said, there's a time-saving option and there's a revenue generation option. We want to have that really clearly defined early on. I've been quite surprised a lot at the readiness of a lot of people. And I think that's, again, a brilliant marketing strategy on the part of the AI companies themselves. The idea that everyone's going to lose their jobs, bringing down kind of headcount in offices. I think that that's a decision to be made, usually on the time-saving path rather than the revenue generation path. But I think one thing that I'm quite passionate about, or looking to help guide businesses on, is the reality of the complexity of what AI actually is as a system. This is something that is not just a one-click saves money, one-click generates revenue. When you approach AI integrations as a business, it represents the building of a new architecture that layers on top of what your business already does. So it's not a frivolous task to integrate AI. There's a lot of noise in the space at the moment. Sorry, is there a question? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, there's a question. Sorry. Hi, Oman. Hi, everyone. So you've just touched on something that's always been a kind of like a bugbear for me, and that's like the buy-in. Because like I said, I think there's a gap in people actually understanding the upfront cost of embarking on, as you say, either you want to use AI as a revenue generating tool, or you want to use it as a tool that improves your processes.
Yes.
I'm very happy that you touched on the fact that, there are two separate things that can be aligned, but none of that matters if you don't understand what your output is.
Exactly.
So my question is, how do you get that buy-in? Because like you said, there's a lot of noise. Okay, yes, we want to do AI. We want to get it working. We want it to come and fix all these things. But if your data isn't right, if your infrastructure isn't right, it's not a simple plug and play. So for me, it's always the governance bit that I find people never talk about. And when I say the governance bit is like you say, the buy-in. How do we want to do this? And do we know what it is that we want to do, as opposed to, oh yeah, let's just plug and play and Bob's our uncle.
100%. Yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. And this is something that I'm kind of building to, but it's a great time to jump in and have this conversation. The issue, I think, is partly marketing related, and I think it's also one of the benefits slash quirks of kind of first movers in like the influencer space, who already have massive traction, already have massive audiences, and therefore have an incentive to kind of sell magic to people. The reality of AI integration, and this, if you take anything away from this talk, there's something I'm going to bang the drum on quite a lot, and it's something that I'm pretty passionate about, is demystifying this process. This is not a magic bullet. It's what you're doing is you're undertaking a significant systemic reframing, restructuring almost of your business to do this properly. You can, again, as I mentioned on a previous slide, we can talk about automations, which can be a little bit more plug and play. We just want something to read our emails and spit out responses. This is a very simple thing, but I think what businesses imagine, or business leaders imagine when they talk about AI, is the more structural transition, but there's a little bit of a disconnect between what that looks like and what that requires to get done. I mean, if by show of hands for the few people that are on camera, could anybody here reliably list their business's entire tech stack off the top of their head? Right. So these are issues which we're going to need to start discussing as a community, really, as we embrace AI, as we move our businesses towards AI. And even within that question, when I start talking about tech stacks, there are likely things that popped into mind. Maybe you're thinking Salesforce, maybe you're thinking Monday.com. But one thing that I think is really, really crucial and is often left out of a lot of these conversations when it comes to the integration is the flow of data through your business. Do you understand where data enters your business? Do you understand where it goes within your business? Are your CRMs merely stockpiles of tasks that have been forgotten? Is the data in there parsed? Is it clean? Is it regularly maintained? Because I know from my own experience working inside businesses that 9 times out of 10, and probably 10 times out of 10, your SharePoint is a mess, the Dropbox is a mess, there's a Google Drive with a bunch of things in it from years ago. There's going to be a platform like Pitch, which has decks that have been half finished, reports that have been rushed, because the nature of humans, and let's not talk about Excel sheets and Google Sheets and things like that. The nature of humans is that data entry is quite a boring and repetitive task, and it gets pushed and has for generations been pushed to kind of like the back of all business processes. When it's the last thing people want to do, it's the last job that people want to touch. It's boring, it's data entry, and the people who do it meticulously, there's still mistakes because it's difficult. And if you're dealing with 1,000-line spreadsheets or 5,000-line spreadsheets, unfortunately, these are the things that AI is now bringing to light. What we need to do a comprehensive integration or make a business, upscale a business, transform a business to make it AI ready for the future, is you're going to have to understand that data flow, understand where those blockages are. Imagine them like dams in a river. We're going to need to go through the entire business from top to bottom, understand where the data goes, understand where it's stored, understand what format and what language and how well and cleanly that data is stored within those dams. And you're going to need to be able to either train the AI to parse it correctly or clean the data. I think one of the first conversations I had with a client is let's see your data, let's see where all your data lives. It was on a platform called JobAdder. Some of you may be familiar, but it was ultimately the long and short of it is it was a complete mess. There's no clean data. Things are misspelt in different columns. These things become incredibly important because the AI is it's a system that reads, so it's going to misinterpret things if data is incorrectly stored. If there's the name and location of a business in a spreadsheet in a different column than it should be, the AI is going to stumble over things like that. You're going to have to program it for edge cases. It sounds very boring, but this is where the money is being lost because people are approaching the AI integration process without understanding the potential for these things to go wrong. So yeah, to your point, massively important, can't be overlooked. The flow of information through the business is one of the first audits I would ask people to conduct. I think the first thing we'd want to do is understand your tech stack front to back. Not to belabor the point, but that also includes things like WhatsApp. How much of your business communications day to day go through informal communication platforms that you don't have oversight of? Because I know from, again, personal experience, half of the conversations are happening on Slack, half of them are happening on WhatsApp. Some people are texting each other to get things done. This is normal human behavior, but in the context of an holistic AI integration, things are being missed because we're not looking into these platforms. We're not understanding how people even communicate within our business. Do we know how teams communicate? Do we have a graph of how teams communicate daily? Who contacts who via email? What are the workflow chains? And what information is being discussed and what is the output of that information? Or is it just an amorphous black box of people with inputs and outputs that we don't understand? So the journey to integrating AI is really, the first step of that journey is really a re-understanding of what your business even looks like. So I think that what we like to do when we work with clients is conduct an audit first and foremost. This is actually a longer process than it's not sexy, it's not attractive, but this is how you get results in the long run versus spending a bunch of money that goes nowhere. So moving on to the next slide, where it's just noise. So the tool before the problem, buying AI first, then hunting for something to point it at. This is something that has happened repeatedly in my own experience. People get very excited about the notion of AI without necessarily understanding what they're going to do with it. The audit is the solution to this. Bolted on, owned by no one, nobody's job to make it work, so it doesn't. One of the illusions of AI is that it's going to cut your staff down. I think in the first instance, it's probably going to increase your staff. This has happened with consultants largely, but there should be a dedicated person and or team once the system is built a little bit further down the road to actually managing the system, making sure it's updated, running it on a day-to-day basis. This is a vector for increasing team capacity, not necessarily reducing it. It may reduce it in some areas, increase it in others. It's a tech solution. People need to understand it. People need to manage it. Whether that's a consultant or a third party is up to you. But there's going to need to be people responsible for the system. It's not just going to take care of itself. As tech stack changes, the system needs to be updated, needs to be plugged into new systems. People need to be trained on it. These are all things that are really important. Great in the demo, useless on Monday, so it doesn't survive contact with real work. Again, this is usually the result of a process that's been integrated without fully understanding the business. Things haven't been audited, doesn't work in reality. A subscription that outlives the usage, so something that's paid for monthly and never opened because it doesn't work. Sometimes the right amount of AI is none. It's not a cure-all, this isn't a silver bullet, it's a systemic restructuring of your company's tech stack. It should be respected as such. Sometimes the task just doesn't need AI. We don't need to always just slap AI into things that don't require them. Okay, 3 questions are the surface. Real AI audit goes deeper. So how information actually flows through the business is what we've just touched on and discussed. Where it enters, who touches it, where it gets stuck, what your tech stack is, what does it already know. Most businesses are sitting on data and their tools never use. Backlogs, reports from years ago, archives, cloud storage that hasn't been touched in ages but contains relevant information. Where does the time actually go? Measured, not guessed. The answer usually surprises people. How are your team spending their time? How are they communicating? What platforms are they using? What conversations are being had? Does the system need oversight of this? Probably. This is the audit I designed and run with businesses. We can dig into it properly over the next couple of sessions. Today you start with a simple version. So audit your own week. List the 10 tasks that eat most of your week. This should be a task that in my opinion, every employee should carry out. Again, I've built an audit system to really help people with this. I can shoot a link over to individuals, and you can just share that with your teams, and they can all fill out the audit, and it will amalgamate the data. It's an agentic workflow that I built to help businesses understand exactly where AI best fits. So we can have a conversation about that. Run each through these 3 questions: repeats, pattern, could a temp do the job, and pick one biggest time meter that passed. So it's a starting point. What took the most time after these questions were asked? Bring it to session 2, and we can run through a deeper audit together. So yeah, the next 3 weeks, where AI actually fits. This has been today. So spotting real opportunities. The next session will look at what good looks like, an in-depth audit, your data flow, your tech stack, why some AI sticks, what others get abandoned, putting it to work. Week 3, what building an AI system actually entails front to back. We're going to get like kind of more complex. I wanted this talk to be a little bit top line. There's so much information to cover, and I could really go off on a million tangents about what AI represents, what the technology means, how it works, what it does, how we can integrate it. And then the final conversation that we'll be having on week 4 is own it, don't rent it. This is a massive point of discussion, which I'll go into really briefly here. But there's a vector that is going to become increasingly apparent to business owners and leaders between owning and renting your tech stack and your data. There's 2 examples here. There's the kind of classic example of what we've just discussed at length, which is kind of your AI integration angle. And then there's another example, a case study I'd like to use is anyone here familiar with the company Publicis? Yeah, so Publicis are obviously a massive media conglomerate with infinite resources for all intents and purposes. So for them, it was a little bit easier, but they made a very bold decision at the beginning of 2020, or end of 2024, beginning of 2025, which was to essentially create an entire new wing of their business specifically around AI integration, which was called Publicis Sapient, which is a new branch of their business. They spent millions, potentially tens of millions, new office, new team. They built an entire sub-company around it. But it is representative of this decision tree, which is, are you going to rent your infrastructure, or are you going to build your own architecture and infrastructure? This is the decision that companies are faced with, and it comes down to working, I guess, with or setting up systems based on APIs, so your Anthropics, your OpenAI, your Google Geminis, integrating these into your workflows, versus training your own LLMs, your own AIs on your business processes. Now, the first option is going to be faster, still longer than people are promising, but it is faster. The second option is going to be more expensive and take a little bit longer, take maybe potentially a lot longer, but the kingmakers of the next few years will be people who move to build architecture. We're very much still at the architecture phase of the AI tech life cycle. Everything that's happened, despite all the hype, is really about architecture and infrastructure. People are building systems to own that infrastructure. We're in a very unique place in history with AI, but also in the cycle of any tech innovation, where first movers have a real opportunity to build infrastructure that then everybody else uses in perpetuity. This happened with, you can take this back to like the postal service, boats, any kind of technological innovation you want to choose, the dot-com boom. The first few years are always about infrastructure. So businesses have an opportunity to either build infrastructure and then sell it to people who are going to be second movers. As a first mover, you have that opportunity. We're still kind of in that bubble right now. Or there's the second choice, which is to integrate on top of other people's architecture. But I think it's very important to be aware at this point that when you build on top of someone else's architecture, you are training their models, you are training their systems to become more competent at replacing you. This may not be something that happens instantly, but it's something that is going to happen over time. We can see it with, I mean, obviously I've been building in the space for a while now, but you can literally see Anthropic integrate features that people are building. It is happening. There's no way to truly secure your data from LLMs because of the nature of the technology. So people, I've seen a lot, this is just sidebar now, I'm rambling, but I've seen a lot of people use Windows solution. I can't remember the name of it. Points for shouting it out. Windows have, Microsoft have like a whole suite of LLM.
Foundry?
Azure is the name I was looking for.
Azure.
Yeah. So I think one of the core promises of Azure is it protects everyone's data within Microsoft's ecosystem. The technology of LLMs kind of makes this somewhat impossible. You can protect it from, I guess, traveling in and out of the system in ways that you don't want, but the nature of an LLM means if your data is speaking to an LLM, it's learning from your data. That's just how they work. So you have a choice to train your own models and really master that tech stack, master that journey as a business for the next 5 to 10 years, or obviously to use someone else's infrastructure. There are pros and cons to each, but you should all be aware that by using someone else's infrastructure, you are enabling them to train their models on your business ultimately. So that's something to bear in mind. And I think it echoes the broader point, which is AI integration is a process. It's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. You don't need to race to the finish line with this stuff. To do it properly, you're going to want to take a longer view. And I think it's worth doing well because it touches every part of your business. It touches all your data. It's a very important seismic transformative technology, as we're all aware. But it merits doing things slowly, understanding the data flow within your business, and building procedurally, making some mistakes, taking time, doing it in a step-by-step process, and having the humility as a business leader, but also the patience to kind of go through the process and learn about the technology and how it best serves your business, rather than kind of rushing to a nebulous goal that nobody understands, and spending a lot of money doing so. It's going to cost either way. That's the nature of new technology, but I think it's worth, and it's also an amazing opportunity for businesses to be leaders in their spaces and in their industry by creating solutions that are unique to their specific business and to their understanding of the market. We're at a very unique time in history where businesses have the opportunity now to own their entire tech stack, to create their entire tech stack, to really have ownership of how information, data, and output comes in and out of their own businesses without having to touch third-party tools if they don't want to. This has never been possible before, but it is possible now. But it's going to take innovative and patient business leaders to kind of make those calls and make those steps. And the first, just to tie a bow on it, the first step starts with an audit and really understanding how data moves in and out of your business. Thank you for listening. Open to questions. I think it's the last slide. Oh, yeah. We've touched on this, but yeah, thank you for listening.
Sorry, again, me too curious. So I get the implementation and the delivery in very simple terms of, you know, the AI, i.e. automation or integration. But yeah, what is another interesting angle is the change process and adoption.
Yes.
Because I think people don't really put that into consideration, the people who are going to use set tools once it's been built. And I think that's also a cost that really needs to be focused on as part of just not the upfront cost, but post-implementation, how are people going to use it? Because you can build all these things, and you said in one of your slides, you pay for the subscription and it's never open. So I guess so the two things that I'm keen on, and I'm hoping that you will answer as you go on with the series, is obviously the people element and the governance, because in the industry that I work in, those are two major, I don't want to use the word barriers or blockers, but two major things that determine the way business leaders in my organization choose and decide.
Yeah.
We're very keen on, we're very, very heavy on security.
Yes.
Very heavy on protecting our data. But at the same time, we also are very, very clear that we have people who have been doing this for a very long time and introducing a new element or a form of change.
Yep.
The adoption cycle of people versus the adoption cycle of the tech. If they don't marry, then it's considered as a waste. Does that make sense? So it's always that clash of, okay, we know we need to do this.
Yep.
We are aware that there is an upfront cost, but no one is really talking about how are people going to use this. And I think that's the pocket that I want to sit in.
Sure.
That's what interests me. So the governance and the pocket, because there's a lot there's a lot within it, but I'm not a techie. I get techie people, don't get me wrong, but I'm more of the people side, the user side. The who have the processes that you're asking to complete the audit form. But he's going to be like, okay, I've completed the form. What's in it for me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's selling that what's in it for me. I'm just really curious on how you've in the things that you've done, how you've moved that needle along in terms of the change in adoption.
Yeah, I think that kind of depends on, again, it starts with what the actual function or what problem you're trying to solve within the business will dictate who's using the system. And again, I think that speaks to a kind of more nebulous conversation, maybe about whether you're looking at pure automations to just make repetitive tasks go away or be a lot simpler, or whether you're trying to kind of do something a little bit more innovative and that requires kind of more inference and thought work from the system. I think that should be dictated by the goal, and that the goal should be defined first. Because it's all very well kind of like starting with the user, but if you don't actually have the system ironed out from beginning to end in terms of what the problem it's going to solve, you can't really identify the user first. Because it may be the case that you just need one member of the dev team to manage the system, and it does a bunch of automated work in the background, or it might be something that's a little bit more integrated with the business, in which case it needs to be built with the staff using it in mind.
Yeah.
So if you're building like a holistic chatbot that discusses the business with all employees or particular teams, it will need to be built and scaffolded with that in mind. Whereas if it's happening in the background, it might be like a tool that the tech team just uses. So I think the best way to answer that question is to start with the problem you're trying to solve, and really iron that out first, if that helps. Sorry, Isabel, did you have a question as well?
That wasn't really a question, but actually, is it Didi? I don't know if I pronounced your name right. I can't see very well. Sounds like we work in very sort of similar environments, very much people process experience kind of lens within the tech world, and everything you just said really heavily aligns with me. So we've recently, on the customer side, we have a managed service provider who provide our service desk, and we've recently started using agentic AI, and the experience has been really good overall. But I agree with what Didi was saying. It feels a little bit like we as the customer probably should have been involved a lot more in the creation and the design of that agentic AI, but because it's a shared platform, it's a shared service, lots of different customers, it almost feels like the end user wasn't considered too much in that process. So yes, it ticks the box of it exists and it works and it functions, but actually from an end user perspective, the experience could be so much better. And we're now in this kind of not limbo, but it's only kind of 2.5 months in, so it's still really early, but they're looking to kind of drive it on other channels. So we've got it on web chat at the moment, and they're looking to drive it on things like phone. And it really resonated when you said, Amari, about sometimes the right amount of AI is none, because at the moment it feels like we are so immature in this space that actually trying to now drive it on the phone line. My question was, well, what's the point of this? We've got nothing automated yet. The functionality is more signposting and knowledge provision. At the moment, there's no kind of automation. So it feels like actually the first step should be, let's mature in the space and automate some stuff and actually ensure the experience is positive before we look to kind of broaden it. It feels a little bit in reverse to me. And also, it's not been set up in a way that enables us to capture feedback from users in a really useful, meaningful way. So although, yes, it works, it feels like there's a big gap in what's that journey and what's that experience for users, because although it could improve time for the service desk agents and free up them to work on the more complicated stuff and therefore improve resolution on the complicated stuff. If we don't get it right now, actually users are just going to divert from AI and just say, put me through to a human. And actually we'll then end up with a really bad habit of AI avoidance. And I'm a bit nervous that actually without, like you say, the right change in adoption, we're going to actually shoot ourselves in the foot and end up then having to try and backtrack on that habit and behavior. So it feels like you say, what's the purpose? The purpose is improving incident resolution, but also experience needs to be hand in hand with that because it's end user facing. So super exciting, but also, you got to land it right. Otherwise, you might actually go backwards and pay for the stuff that doesn't actually get used.
Is it a third-party tool that you're using, or is it something you guys built yourself?
No, everything's managed through the managed service provider, so we are purely the customer. But we can influence the processes and the way it's used and things, though, the automation side of it.
Have you thought about building it in-house or recreating it in-house?
So it wouldn't be my decision to make, but not at this point. We've just renewed the contract, and it's kind of having an internal service desk wouldn't be feasible. We are a huge company, but we wouldn't have an internal service desk. So that would be third party. And as part of that package, it's something that like most of these suppliers now do, they have AI is bolted onto everything, isn't it? It's kind of part of the selling point. But yeah, so it wouldn't be an in-house thing, at least not in the short term, not for our service desk anyway. So yeah, sorry, that wasn't a question. It was more just to validate. It was more just validating what Didi said, but also a lot of what you were saying really resonated with me. Of sometimes it's not the right thing to do, and really thinking about what's the purpose of what we're trying to achieve with AI, and where can it benefit, and where does it need that judgment, the relationship, so it's really useful talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well, because for me it's exactly that. I know it's all bells and whistles, but why and what do we use it for? I just feel like that question is never fully answered. There's always a part answer to the question, or there's always an idea of, oh yeah, but it can do this, but then we don't explore it in depth to understand exactly how.
Yeah.
And then the result of not doing that, we then drop the ball, like Isabel is saying, because I think we're probably in the same industry as well. But yeah, so we have a service desk that is not ours. It's a service desk. So again, there's the question about, oh yeah, we want to do telephony service where people can call in to log a ticket, but there's GDPR connotations around that. How do you identify someone?
Identification, verification. Yeah, we've got the exact same conversations.
Without their data not being anonymized, because we're a regulated industry. Do you see what I mean? So I am a firm believer in AI doing wonderful things, but I just feel like, for me, it's no one talks about the change in adoption, and no one talks about the upfront cost of what this entails. So your conversation today has been really helpful, because it's sort of put it in a very clear way of, someone comes to me and has a conversation like, well, actually, have you thought about this? Because
yeah, and it's a bigger undertaking. I think people are excited, and that tends to make people rush. And I think that it's important to really understand, kind of, again, like, your business tech stack. Data flow is super key. End user experience and the problem you're actually trying to solve should be identified prior to all this stuff. And then there's an understanding about cost and time. I think time is the big one, because people assume AI is this quick fix to everything, but it's actually you're essentially building an entire tech layer on top of your company. So it requires the reference and the patience properly. Otherwise, you will end up with what a lot of people have unfortunately ended up with, which is like a lot of money spent, not great results. People are trying to make a quick buck, and it's easy to promise the world in the space. But I think what's happening is that as the space matures, people are maybe come back and have some of those conversations. So
you're exactly part of that. You're exactly right, and it does feel a little bit like vendors are kind of learning as they go too, because this is new for them, so they are maturing in this space with us, almost as not guinea pigs, but kind of. But one of the things you were saying about with the automation side, one of the benefits I see in my space, and Didi, you might feel similar, is it almost feels like you said about the data not being good, and if the data isn't good, actually everything else that follows isn't great. So one of the ways I'm thinking about AI now is, how can we leverage AI automation purely to get the data input a better quality, because then that will spit out for us where our improvements can be made. And at the moment, because we have a big service desk, because we're a big company, we have a lot of incidents. It feels like that data quality, it's really hard to understand, for example, why password resets are so high, when actually the data that's going in is so poor. So by automating something, even if the benefit is purely to understand the data outputs better, for me, is maybe something we could leverage. But then quantifying that afterwards and justifying automation is a piece.
Yeah, it's a real process, and I think one of the things that I've worked with clients in the past is like looking at their database and then creating tools purely, like you just mentioned, to clean that data. Which is like kind of migration. Again, this is where it gets interesting, and again, because that in and of itself is quite a task, right? I mean, legacy databases being migrated and cleaned. These are huge processes, but this is the kind of undertaking that people need to become comfortable with in this AI conversation. So I mean, again, something that I've worked with businesses on before, and it takes time. You can build software to do it though, and the models are getting better at interpreting data. So one way to approach that would be maybe once you've understood your tech stack and where all the data lives, trying to kind of amalgamate that into one place that's then easily readable and connectable to your AI service that you're building, but kind of creating a kind of singular centralized database that represents your kind of entire company's tech stack would be one thing that would be potentially helpful in that instance. But again, it's going to require looking at the tech stack, where all the data is stored, having those conversations. That's a process. And then obviously security and things like that are paramount as well.
Sure.
I'm almost being smug because my organization is multi-tenant, so finding data.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it at my laughter so that you can just digest. Finding data on a multi-tenancy is a needle in a haystack is easier.
Yeah.
Let me just put it that way because of the way my organization is. So every time a glimpse or a pebble is dropped in the ocean, oh, maybe we should do this with AI. I'm just like, you lot are not ready for this conversation. You really are not.
It's a much bigger conversation than people
It's a much bigger conversation. So where we're at is we're trying to move into a single tenant.
Yeah. And you're about to say something, I think, which is really important. I think it represents an opportunity for companies to take ownership of their own data as well.
Yeah.
The massive conversation in of itself. There are AI-ready tools. Like, for example, I use for my business, I use Supabase, which is a great AI-ready database tool. But using, like we've just talked about, Isabel, in terms of taking your data from multiple places and aggregating it to one place, if you can now do that and manage it yourselves, have your own database rather than using a third-party tool, this is massively going to help over time. But again, it speaks to steps on a ladder to full integration as opposed to immediate solution. So yeah.
And that expectation management is a big one too, isn't it? That these things, like you say, to get these things done well and right, not necessarily first time, but early doors enough that actually we aren't then building bad habits or bad behaviors and or avoiding AI is so important. And for example, we went live and within 1 month I had people senior asking me, what's the benefits we're seeing? Well, you can start to see some benefits straight away. Had to really be, set the expectation that we need a few months of trending to really understand, because and the same with adoption was great straight away, but I said let's just see what things show and whether it stays that, because something's new and shiny, yes, adoption might spike, but actually then again, if that experience isn't great, we might see a dip off. So it's really it's kind of pushing back and saying we need a bit of time to really see what the data is telling us and understand. It's quick, but it's not that quick.
100%, and I think that like business owners would do well to kind of pace themselves and
slow it down.
Slow it down, build the understanding and what they're undertaking, rather than expect instant gratification.
Build iteratively.
And you'll actually remain a first mover if you take it slowly, because companies will be making this mistake. So everybody's going to rush and then have to redo the process again. So you're better off taking it slow from the outset and getting it right than kind of like running and then having to redo it. So
exactly. Do something iteratively, learn from it, and then not take those same mistakes into the next thing and the next thing. Anyway, I feel like I've had the mic enough, but this has been super helpful. It's really nice having these conversations with people outside of the space you work in, and we're all feeling similar pains, I think, and experiences, which is telling.
It's been really, really good. So thank you, Omari, and thank you, Isabel, for always jumping in as well, because it's sometimes it's very difficult having this conversation because this always seems like you're the only one thinking about it, but it's a problem that needs to be solved. And considerations are given to these tools, but then you're just like, let me just sit in my little bubble and just try and fix the pieces when it all comes crashing down. But again, it's always trying to just make sure that you can be at least one step ahead. So this has been really helpful, Omari. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate it. And again, if anybody wants to discuss things offline, or I'm more than happy to talk to businesses or work with clients on a person-to-person basis, please let me know. Anything I can do to help.
Thank you.